Welcome in to another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. It is bold predictions tonight here, so we're going to be getting into some spicy talk about your LA Kings. So get in the chat, like and subscribe. You know what to do. Let's go. Thank you. That intro is brought to you by Ezera. Their new single out is Blind, out now anywhere you listen to music. And as you headbang to that song, headbang over to the like button, smash that before we get started here tonight. Boys, bold predictions tonight. I don't know if mine is like eating Taco Bell while wearing white pants bold, but it might be kind of bold. Maybe not as bold as Trevor Moore last season. I like that one that I hit. I'm excited to see where the over-unders are at. The bold predictions in the chat. So if you got some bold predictions in the chat, please throw them in there. When we get to that section, I'm interested to see what the fans have to think. But before we dive in, hopefully into a swimming pool full of water, how are you guys doing?
Doing good. It's been last 2 days, been watching a lot of baseball. Playoffs obviously have started. So today the Tigers clinched. That was cool. The Royals clinched, and now they'll face Joe's Yankees. So looking forward to that. And it seems like the Dodgers are destined to play the Padres again, which I'm a little worried about as a Dodger fan, but we'll see. So it's been fun. How you doing, Joe?
Good. Looking forward to the Yankees-Dodgers World Series that we all deserve.
That's
we all
right.
want it. We all deserve it. Let the baseball gods give it to us.
Exactly.
So I was sitting there and, obviously had the heartfelt episode last week. So I haven't really been watching much baseball, just been out of it. And my mom gives me a call the other day and she goes, my Dodgers are in. You going to be watching any playoff baseball? And I go, I don't know. Like, maybe we'll see. So I just happened to go on MLB.com to see who made it. And I'm like, Royals versus Orioles? And then the Guardians are in first place. So I'm like, what catastrophe happened this season to where this is what we're left with? The Tigers, their playoff roster makes less than Hader with a closer for the Astros. So much parity. I was like, oh man, there's so many storylines that I probably missed out this season. Mm-hmm. And then also I saw a guy lose 10 grand because he bet that nobody would go 50-50 this year on a bet. It was a random prop at something, and it was like minus 10 grand. So he was betting 10,000 to win 10,026 bucks or whatever. And he's like, there's no way anybody does this. So it's an easy 10 grand. I have 10 grand to spend.
It was probably Shohei's
agent.
One last dagger.
Oh man. So I might get into it. I might turn on the Dodgers and see what I can do. I remember I watched them for the last World Series that they won. Even though baseball really wasn't a part of my thing there, and it was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. I remember my mom. She grew up, did a little babysitting for the Dodgers, and would tell me all these stories. Our grandpa was a low level scout. And everything like that. So it's all the baseball stories for that organization, were pretty cool. And so they don't have the heartstrings that the A's do for me, but I still appreciate them and they've been a part of my life. So probably, I'll probably watch them and Trapper 9. Why are you bringing the negative energy in here, man? We're flying high. Thanks for our
fans we feel like we're cursed over the last few years. So things are looking good so far. I don't know. But once the playoffs come around, for some reason, Mookie can't hit. Freddie had trouble last year. But now there's Shohei's involved. And it'll be Shohei's first time in the playoffs, too. So that's exciting. Yeah. So we'll see what goes down.
We got people in the chat lining it up here. Nav21, what's up, boys? Stephen K. Good evening, boys. Go Kings, go. Lieb, hey Joe,
Hey, Lee.
and Russ and Randon.
What's up,
Derek, hey boys. Piglet is saying Padres are on fire. Eye emojis. Cy Tigers with a huge dream going on here. Al Smith, hey y'all. Lead with some explicit for Houston team down in Houston, and then we got some other comments there about some sports. So let's get into hockey. Let's turn it over the ice here. Very chilling action against the Ducks here last week in the preseason. What did you guys see? I mean, I was in sunny Florida, so drinking some margaritas on the beach. So I really wasn't previewed to this action here. What did we see from the game against Anaheim?
Yeah, I mean, the result was great. Obviously, 4-0 win. Can't be upset about that. You're not necessarily looking at results in terms of the game. Watching these preseason games, you're more or less looking at individuals and how they're playing in certain situations. So I think going into the game, when you look at the lineups, my initial kind of preview going into the game, I was thinking about, okay, well, how's the Deneau line going to look with Deneau and Moore? Because I thought that they kind of struggled a little bit in the game against Vegas. So I was interested in watching them. And then we got our first look at Mikey Anderson playing with Jordan Spence. And that was really the first time we had seen that since Drew Doughty was out. So that was kind of really what I was paying attention to throughout the entire game. And to be honest with you, both really impressed. I mean, it was a little bit of a confusion because Trevor Moore, I guess, sat and Akil Thomas took his place playing on that line. And that was kind of a last-second change. Jim Hiller just made it known. They just wanted to get a look at Akil in that spot. They're very comfortable where Trevor Moore and Phil Deneau are at in their chemistry. Obviously, they've been playing together for quite some time, so there's no need to kind of drill that down. But we saw Akil play there, and he had probably his best game of the preseason so far. And Jim Hiller even made the comments talking about that Akil had somewhat of a slow start to the camp, which I really understand because you see a lot of these players that have really kind of stolen the spotlight a little bit. Sammy Helenius has had some great reviews. Andre Lee, some other players that maybe we look at. Alex Turcotte, too, is one of them. So Akil's kind of settled back a little bit. But I thought the game against Anaheim, he really played a typical Akil Thomas type of game that we're accustomed to seeing. So that was good. And then the Mikey Anderson, Jordan Spence pair, man, I mean, they were outstanding. The entire game, I'm watching it, and Jordan Spence just looked like the typical Jordan Spence that we've seen when he's not being paired with a ball and chain that he has to just drag around the ice. You give him a competent defensive pair, and look what he's able to do. I think at one point at the end of the second period, shots were 9-1 when they were on the ice. So I think that's where it gives Kings fans a lot of hope to kind of see that, because obviously once Drew Doughty goes down, it's like, oh man, all the season's lost, blah, blah, blah. But that's where I'm not really that concerned, because you have a player like Jordan Spence, if given the right opportunity, can excel in this lineup and playing for this team. So that was exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, and that just goes back, Russ. Everywhere, every article I feel like that comes out from a lot of folks, mainly in people that are more national media, if you will, the conversation is always, well, Brant Clark is going to be the one to step up, and I think we think he's going to. He probably has to.
Just so everybody knows, here I'm the anonymous source that all those people are getting.
I was going to say, I think there's one guy here that's doing that.
He clearly is going to get more minutes. It's by default because with Doughty out, right? Then maybe he would have originally been planned to get. But I just completely getting overlooked in this whole conversation all the time, it seems to me, is Jordan Spence, who, yeah, I think he's going to fit in perfectly fine with Mikey Anderson. I love that pairing. I think he could bring a little bit more. He's not to say he's better than Drew necessarily, but he's different than Drew. And I can see him bringing a little bit more out of Mikey. I think there can be a little bit more in Mikey's game from an offensive standpoint. And that plus the system change, we may see a little bit more offense from Mikey. I think that's in the cards. So fully echo the Mikey Anderson, Jordan Spence, agree on Akil Thomas. And actually want to go back to something Jim Hiller said after the game. He said there's more there, he quoted, with Mikey. I took note of that because I was like, that's interesting, because they asked about his leadership and, him being a leader. And normally coaches are just, especially preseason, they're just going to rave about a guy. And he was very complimentary, don't get me wrong. But I thought it was interesting that he's like, we're always satisfied with Mikey's game, but Mikey shouldn't be satisfied with Mikey's game. And we know there's more there. So that was a little bit of like, maybe a little kick in the butt. Like, hey, there's more to your game. You can do a little bit more. And maybe that's a little bit of a challenge too, saying, hey, Doughty's out, man. So if you got another level, let's find it.
Which we don't often hear from Kings brass that like, there's not a lot of like underhanded, it's not like we're the Tennessee Titans. That quote cracked me up. I don't know if you heard that. He's like, we would have been better off today kicking on first down or punting on first down. And we probably would have won the game. I was like, oh, damn. Like, shots fired.
I mean, I don't want to make it sound like he was negative because he wasn't, but I thought it was interesting the way in what he said. And I see Holden, the PDO cast, brought up Jordan Spence. So I have not yet listened to the PDO cast yet. They've had their debut episode. And if there's any podcast that would bring up Jordan Spence that's not this show, it's the PDO cast. So good job there.
Well, I want to ask you guys this then about Spence before we keep bouncing it around.
Sure.
So Drew Doughty is about 210, 220. Spence is about 180 pounds. Obviously, Doughty, that size helps with him playing penalty kill, him playing all those minutes, using the big bodies up against all the number one centers. I mean, McDavid's a big guy. McKinnon's a big guy. You got a lot of the big number one centers are larger. Do you feel like Spence's size is worthy for a number one defenseman? I mean, I know he's able to defend with his stick and his feet, but playing 14 minutes a night is different than playing 21 minutes a night and giving up 30 pounds to every center out there that he's going to be guarding now. Is that a concern for you long term? Because I know he's not been asked to do that.
I already know, because you're asking Joe if he's concerned about his size of a defenseman. I know where he's going with this one.
I'm not saying size is needed to, but I'm saying like giving up 30 pounds and now the minutes are increased.
Oh, yeah.
I understand, because there's what there could be is a wear and tear. He's going to be, if he's playing more minutes, you're going to get more contact. I don't have concerns about him like defending, because, and I will find his name, and I don't have it handy. I think it's either Greg or Craig Revac, who posts a lot of interesting clips. He's a coach, and I follow him for a lot of coaching tidbits. And he had a clip. I retweeted a few the other day about guys getting in on, it was a lot of guys getting in on forechecks and checking with your stick. But like, this is to me the definition of hard to play against when we talk about modern hockey. And there's a few clips that I retweeted about, it's just always in somebody's face, always pressure, always with your feet, always with your brain and your stick and your body position. And I just think that is so much more effective these days than just rope size, right? Now, I think your question is fair about, will he break down? Will there be lingering stuff more because of his size versus, Doughty, who obviously physically is a bigger dude, and is used to handling that load. I think that's fair to ask, and we're going to find out. I mean, because he's going to go from playing third line minutes to, third pair minutes to what looks like first pairing minutes. I'm sure they'll probably spread it out a little bit more than they would. Like, he's not going to play 26 minutes a night like Doughty did, I wouldn't expect. But it's still going to be a jump. I think the question's fair, Randon. Do I have a concern? Not really. I certainly don't have a concern about his defending at all. I understand if the question's more about like just physically, does he wear down more, stuff like that. I think that's fair. And I'm not concerned about it, but I get the question.
Yeah, I don't think he'll probably even get much PK time either. A lot of the PK time and a lot of those minutes that Doughty was eating up is because he's playing in all situations. I don't see Spence playing much penalty kill time. Maybe he could, but depending on who's in the box, obviously. But I mean, even then, if he's playing maybe more than 20 minutes a night, I could see even Hiller just running out Kyle Burrows a lot. But if you're I think it's more or less like, how's he going to go, or how's he going to match up against the other team's top competition? Because that's where you're going to get tested the most. Because I mean, he's been playing third pair minutes with Andreas Englund all last year against more or less bottom tier competition. But now you're going to get battle tested against the other team's top top lines or top players. So I think that's when we'll start to see if whether or not Spence can hold up to that test. And I think he should. Like Joe just said, like he's not necessarily a physically imposing defenseman, but he's going to be in your face because of his skating ability and his escape ability too is what's so great about Jordan Spence. I think that was one of the things I noticed when watching those two play together, Mikey Anderson, is that they were able to kind of mesh together and kind of have this fluidity together in their own zone. And it led to such clean breakouts, or more or less, I feel like Drew Doughty is kind of like this slow floor general type point guard where he's just kind of watching play dictate in front of him, and then he kind of sets it up. Where Jordan Spence is going to use his skate ability and try to just go. And I think that's maybe where he gets so excited about this new system change, the 1-3-1 to the 1-2-2, where now he's like, okay, I can just jump into play because now I don't have to worry about being the one back retrieving pucks the whole time. So I think that's where it's going to. I think Jordan Spence is going to shine the most.
I'm just interested in the fact because where my mind went with that is the Kings depend on Doughty so much, and like late in games in the third period when they shorten the bench and he's out there every other shift against the number one line for the other team, is he going to be able to hold up to that kind of level, right? And then because you have Clark who has, which I think his defense is overstated, how being that it's being poor. But I mean, then you have the PK time there. I think that they're going to choose Clark over Spence or vice versa. I just think it's interesting because Mikey Anderson is the smallest of the left shot D, so their whole line doesn't weigh over 400 pounds. So it's not saying that size is everything because I don't I don't believe that as a defenseman, but wear and tear is certainly a thing over 82 games. He's never been asked to play a full 82 games, and now he's going to be asked to play 82 games half the season at least as the RD1. I'm just maybe worried about the wear and tear for him, and maybe his size on the website at 185 is no longer correct, and he's like at 200 because he's put on weight. He's just kid's still young. So I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a concern for me, not because of his playing ability, just because of the rigors of an NHL hockey season.
I get it.
I do wonder if with Doughty's injury, and I don't think this would have come up if Doughty was healthy and they were running out a full healthy defensive lineup. But I wonder with Doughty out now if they do go to 11-7 a little bit more. Because, I mean, I think Caleb Jones, in the few games we've seen him in the preseason, he's looked really good. So if he's another option that you have, maybe as a seventh defenseman, we've seen Hiller be totally fine with moving Quentin Byfield or any forwards up, mixing around when they ran 11 forwards at times. So if you are maybe concerned, I'm sure maybe even the coaches are concerned with that same thing, Brandon. They're probably thinking the same. You add Caleb Jones in the mix, a player that can maybe play both sides, or even Jacob Morara, you call him up. I think that might be an option.
I still can't believe he's not mentioning the actual seventh defenseman in Andreas Englund. I know Russell's trying to forget him, but he is very much still here. I think we talked about that last week, that after the Doughty injury, it's like now it actually does make some sense to roll 8 defensemen, because you could conceivably play 11 and 7 for the reasons you just said. I mean, I would understand it. I don't think it's great because I think it's going to be not Lewis that sits, right? And it'll be a defenseman of the ilk of, Englund coming in, maybe Caleb Jones if we're lucky. So the lineup's worse, right? And then those guys are going to take minutes away from Spence and Clark. So the lineup is going to be worse, but I understand the reasoning behind it, because you're trying to caution them, you're lessen the minutes, perhaps, if that's the reason for Jordan Spence and Brant Clark and whatnot. So
I mean, Gavrikoff's making $6 million a year. So I mean, or 5.5 or whatever it is, but
5.75.
Couldn't they like spread out the minutes instead of having one power?
Well, I think they're going to.
I
think they're going to. I don't think you're going to see, like I said, Jordan Spence is not going to play 26 minutes like Doughty did. His minutes are going to come down. They're going to get spread out. And so, to Russ's point, I think it is possible that we see 11 and 7. And again, I think while I understand it, that really creates a separate issue, because I just don't think the 7 are, the depth. My concern with Doughty is less. I mean, obviously losing Doughty is huge for a lot of reasons, but when you have Spence moving up and presumably Clark moving up, I think that lessens the blow. But the issue is that now that bottom pair, Domlish in the article that came out for The Athletic, said if that's what they decide to do, Spence moves up and Clark moves up, you could see a bottom pair of Edmondson and Burrows, to which he said could be legitimately one of the worst pairs in the NHL. And I think it is very much in the conversation for being one of the worst pairs in the NHL. We've seen nothing. I've seen nothing from Joel Edmondson to maybe like get me to come around a little bit. I mean, it is, guys, it's bad sometimes watching that. So that's the concern, is the depth of the D-core, right? Like, I think in the top end, Spence can replace adequately. It won't be a like for like, but he can fill a role. I think Clark moving up can fill a role. But man, what that does to the bottom pair is tough. That's tough. So,
I mean, to be honest with you, though, if I'd much rather roll out that bottom pair than have Clark be stuck with Joel Edmondson.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, the whole strategy to have Brent to sign Joel Edmondson just for Brent Clark, just to protect him, is that's nonsense.
Just mind-boggling.
Yeah,
the fact that is a thought process, that you find one guy specifically to play with one guy, like in that type of, I mean, and then pay him what you did.
When you're not even, you're protecting him only physically. You're not protecting him in terms of his gameplay. Like, how does that help him get better in terms of as an NHL defenseman?
You don't think guys are going to take a shot at Brant Clark every chance they get?
I remember when Toronto signed Ryan Reeves. I still remember this clip to the day when it happened. Mike John, I was watching TSN, and Mike Johns, everybody was talking about how this signing of Ryan Reeves is going to protect Austin Matthews and William Nylander and Mitch Marner. And Mike was on there just laughing. He's like, no, he's not. Well, he's not going to. Why would Ryan Reeves ever be on ice with Austin Matthews? That makes no sense. And it's the same thing with this. Like, even they have this idea of having Edmondson and Clark on the ice together, which, okay, if that's really your line of thinking, but how is that going to help him get better as a defenseman in terms of accentuate his abilities? It doesn't, because now it gives him it's the same thing we saw with the England and Spence last year. Look at Spence's numbers without England. They were so good. And then his numbers with England, it was awful. It's like, what are we doing?
Brant Clark is 6'2", 205 pounds. Like, he's almost the size of Doughty. He's not a small kid.
Yeah.
Like, and he's a hockey player. He's played hockey his whole life. Does he really need protection? Like, are we talking about like he's just a duck that's fallen out of the nest over here and like, hey baby bird, let's put me back in the, like, no, he's a freaking NHL hockey player. Like, I don't understand the thought process there.
I believe was it Dustin Brown that said, like, when he was in the league, he said anytime there's a young defenseman, I'm attacking him on the forecheck. Do you think because Kevin Bieksa was paired with pick a young defenseman for Vancouver back in the, I don't know, that deterred Dustin Brown from? No, it's nonsense. If there's a forward that's going in hard on a forecheck, pick your forward. They are going to be licking their lips to get a shot in at Brant Clark. They're not worried about Joel Edmondson being out there, because if they're going to go give their licks, they're going to answer the bell. If at best he is going to make them fight for doing it, congrats. It ain't going to deter it. I promise you, it's not going to deter it. It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
And like Lieb here said, Clark has been getting himself into stuff with his face for 20 years. Like, he's a cocky dude. Like, he's probably used to all the jawing and the fighting, like, his whole career.
And he's used to being a target. Yes. And you know, I want to go back to, you know, because Russ, I mean, I hope he's right that Caleb Jones is the seventh defenseman. And Holden here mentions how Caleb Jones is in that spot. Yeah, like, Caleb Jones looks pretty good. You know, Mo Verari looked really good as well.
Really good.
You know? Like, you could, and I hate to beat this dead horse, and I'll promise I'll try not to do it all season, but like, when you have Caleb Jones and Jacob Moverari and Andreas Englund, they all can do what Edmondson can do, if not, and probably much more too, for significantly less money. So that's the whole thing that drives me nuts about that whole signing. Again, I'm beating the crap out of this dead horse, but yeah, I like Caleb Jones. I think he's looked okay. I think he's looked better than Burrows. So I kind of like going back to that Edmondson Burrows. I think the Kings would be better off with Edmondson Jones or Edmondson Moverari, frankly. I don't think that's going to happen, but
I mean, I love the way Tuna looked. I mean, and it's funny because he was playing the right side too, which was the funniest part about it, because now it's like it's a position he doesn't normally play, and he still was typical Jacob Moverara, the same defenseman that goes out there, plays 15 minutes, and gives you consistently good hockey. Like every time he goes out there. And Joe, I loved what you tweeted, because there's always for some reason, this organization they find great, or they love what Jake Marver does enough to the point where they give him a 2-year extension, but they don't want to give him consistent NHL minutes, which makes no sense, because you're never left wondering, like, or you're never looking at a play saying, come on, Jacob. Like, I feel like there's never really been one of those. And it seems like he's only just getting better and better.
The Tanner Jeannot goal that he scored, that was a really nice play by Moverari, picking it off the wall, because we've talked about this before when it was Jersey. He's coming off the wall, because he's on his offhand. He's got to pivot to the center. He did it a real nice. And I'm as soon as he did that, I'm like, that's a nice little play from Moverari there. Gets the shot through Jeannot with a nice play on the finish. And I'm so happy that Jim Fox, on the replay eventually, they looked right at that play, and he praised Moverari for the pivot and the hip movement to kind of get his skates and his footwork into position. Like that's a really good play. It's a little play. It's a subtle play. But if he doesn't do that exact movement, he doesn't get the puck into the shooting lane. He doesn't get it at the net, and Jeannot doesn't score. It's a little thing that, other guys may struggle with on the blue line. So it was good. And we all expected him to go down, especially when, he's not going to be here over Edmondson, obviously, and he's not going to be here over Burrows. He's not going to be here over Englund. So I wasn't expecting him to stay, but it is puzzling to me that they clearly they value him. They want him around. But I don't know.
You know what it is?
Too bad.
The Kings have friend zoned River.
Yes.
It's like you do just enough to maybe one day the Kings will be interested in me. Maybe one day. And they just give you enough little gift here, little there, but he's just completely friend zoned with this organization.
You can tell his confidence has definitely grown too, because it was funny, because when we talked to him after the game, I still remember his first press conference when he was up there at the podium. I think it was his first game. I think he was like shaking. He was so nervous, like talking about his game and giving like really short answers. His English wasn't entirely there, but now we talked to him after the game. He's making comments about his shot, talking about how it was like the soft muffin, and I'm like, dude, like this guy's hilarious. Like, so you can see this kind of confidence coming into him a little bit more, and I think that's starting to emulate a little bit more on the ice as well.
Yeah.
To the point we're seeing even better out of Jake Moverara.
Yeah.
He said he worked on the right side to give him more versatility to try to make the roster in the offseason.
And I think it didn't work because he made the roster, but I think he looked pretty good. Like, honestly, no complaints from me. So I'm going to leave this. I know we're going to move on here, but just wrapping up, I had a thought last night after watching the game. And I think as the Kings are constructed right now, and this is one of my concerns with them, and I'd see if you guys disagree. I think the Kings have 3 second lines, and I don't know that that's a good thing. Does that make sense to anybody? What do you any?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation I feel like we've had in terms of like, because if we've talked about if the Kings really wanted to have a legit top line, you would just put Fiala with Byfield and Kempe, and that's just like what we consider the 3 best players, or at least the 3 best forwards on this team. And maybe it takes away a little bit from the other 2 lines, but at least that gives you a legitimate top line to kind of match up against. But I mean, I don't know, because I really like. I mean, I think it all is dependent on how the Danault line is going to play, because I really like how that Byfield line looks with Fiala and Fogle. Those 3 are just humming along, so that's good to see.
Yeah.
And Kopitar and Kempe are always going to have that chemistry. They're going to be able to figure it out, and just kind of we'll see how LaFerriere looks there. But it's Danault and more with Jeannot. If they can be that kind of same type of or find that same type of production that they got from having Arvidsson there the last few years, then okay, then you have a legitimate kind of mix to kind of go with. But I see where you're coming from, because they're not necessarily screaming at you like, okay, like legit top line.
I guess what I get at.
Well, every line has something. Every line that has a blemish, right? So the blemish with the Kopitar line is, Kopitar is getting a little bit older. Kempe's the only real shooter. You're relying a lot from a second-year player in LaFerriere, so question mark. The other line, Quentin Byfield, how much of a jump is he really going to take? Is it going to be truly an elite jump where he's a 70, 80-point player and he's carrying that line and he's just an absolute beast? Can Fogle go from an afterthought in the Oilers offense to a real game maker and play with the likes of Fiala? Fiala has a point per game in his tool bag. We've been close, but haven't really seen it for a full season. He's been kind of diminished to a third line here and kind of the forgotten puzzle piece. So, like, is that all going to get together to where does that line all unlock each other's next level? Because if that's the case, then like Russell said, we might have something there. And then the Jeannot line, he was brought in to help stabilize the center of the ice, but he's never really been a second line center. You have Trevor Moore, who unlocked his goal scoring. Where does that go with Akil Thomas and some of the younger players in Jeannot, who had a really good rookie season, but then has been really trash offensively since then, compared to expectations, right? I mean, didn't Tampa Bay trade a first round pick and more for him, right?
For him, yeah.
So, I think there's just blemishes on every single line where you look at a lot of the other competitors in the National Hockey League, like, oh, that's a first line because we know exactly what we're getting from this guy, and this guy. So I kind of think that's kind of where, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for Joe, but that's kind of how I viewed what Joe said.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more just kind of spitballing too. It's like I try to see where there's mismatches, and I think, I think there's potential for that Byfield line, assuming it's a second line, to be I don't know, it can be a mismatch depending on the opponent. I mean, you look at the second line in Edmonton, it's probably going to be Draisaitl, Arvidsson, and Jeff Skinner. There's a lot of goals in that line, a lot of offense in that line. I think the Deneau line on the third line, that can be a mismatch. I don't think that's where I think the Kings are stronger is that third line, where that can be a line that really controls play, because probably not a lot of third lines that can have a guy that can score 30. Deneau is still a 200-foot play driver. So I think that can do well. But I think it's still it's just when you get to the upper echelon in the top six against the top teams, is the top end good enough? And I guess, we'll see. We'll see.
I think this team is built really well for the regular season, just because of that fact, because they have those three lines that aren't necessarily the top end talent across the league, but still pretty good, more or less above average. But it's going to come down when it comes down to the playoff time or towards the end of the season, when points are really at a premium. Maybe that's where there's a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, big players make plays, and if they get we get some progressions, and maybe that'll be a bold prediction for later. But we're going to get started here. We're going to flip it over to one of our sponsors here at DraftKings. It is NFL season, so whether you call it TD, Tutty, or in for 6 touchdowns matter more here at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. We don't care how they score them. We want to bet on touchdowns, and DraftKings Sportsbook is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go for DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. If we're looking right now here for the Thursday night game, Mike Evans to be the first touchdown scorer is plus 750, or Bucky Irving plus 850. So if you want to bet on the Bucs to score first, you got 2 players there. All odds are subject to change. So download the app now. Get ready to do a touchdown dance of your own. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet on touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you just bet $5. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 age eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/ftball. Well, we're going to get into the DraftKings portion of the episode with a little over-under. So with the help of DraftKings, do a little over-under here on the season, and then we might throw some of our own over-unders out there outside of DraftKings. If you guys feel free to get in the comments, throw what you guys feel. We're going to start with a little player props, goals or assist here. So I'm going to start with you guys on this one here. Over under, right now the line at DraftKings, again, these are subject to change, and we're not giving any professionals betting advice. So this is just a little fun little experiment here. But over under 32.5 goals for Adrian Kempe.
I'll say over. I mean, he's hit 40 before. I think he was, what was he, 31? How many last year? He had 28, 28. But over. I say over.
I feel good about the over there too, actually, right now. I'll go over. I think he gets back into the mid to high 30s. Don't know that he gets 40, but I think I can see him getting back in the 35 range.
I like it. I think it's a king sweep for the over there. Let's get into points. Over under 75.5 for Kevin Fiala. So a little injury in the last couple years. Hasn't really played a full season. We're seeing if maybe the line gets going, but he's shown a point per game pace. Before. What do you guys feel about that?
I got the Let Kev Be Kev shirt on today. I'm going over. I'm very bullish on two guys, especially up front this season for the Kings, and that is on the same line, Quentin Byfield and Kevin Fiala. So I think Fiala is a point a game this year. I think Byfield approaches it. So yeah, I'm going over. I think Fiala gets 80 points this year.
Oof, I like it. I am a little concerned. I don't know why. We know he's a point per game player. We just really haven't seen it. But now that we're kind of getting away from this 1-3-1 system, that Fiala was definitely one of the players that was, I don't want to say outspoken about playing it, but he definitely voiced his concerns about it. So I'll say over as well.
I don't want to be boring and say over as well. I see where this, if this were to miss, if this were to get under outside of injury, it would be that he wasn't able to mesh with the Byfield Fogle line. Power play struggles continue. Jordan Spence and Clark aren't able to do what Drew Doughty did right away in their first season. That's where this would fail for me in this line. I do think that it does. If obviously this is all barring healthy, but I would say the over if he's healthy 100% of the season. If you're betting on it, I mean, he hasn't really been that healthy. He's had the way he plays a little bit reckless and abandoned. He misses a few games here and there. The power play was a little off last season. Does it get better with two young players at the point? So if you're throwing some money out there, maybe the under there.
Yeah, I mean that's the one concern. But I think it's like, I don't know if this will be like your typical 3-2 game LA Kings that we've seen in the past. And I wonder, especially early on, like this system's like, obviously they've talked about how this is a very universally used system across hockey. It's not like something that they're not familiar with. Most of these players, if not all of them, have already played in this type of style where it might be a little bit more open. So I wonder if maybe you see more games that are like, it was almost like the start of last year too, or a couple years ago, where it was just every game was like 5-4, 6-5, or something like that crazy. So I wonder if that's where, like Sai says, "Oh God, not the 9-8 LA Kings." Yeah, so I wonder if that's maybe what we see a little bit at the early parts of the game, and maybe that's where you start to see some of these players get a little bit higher in their point totals because of it.
All right, a little over under 66.5 points for Anze Kopitar.
See, I think he's had back-to-back 70-point seasons. The guy's still doing it. I'm going to go a little under, though. I think he's not far off. I think the numbers, he's going to be right around the mid 60s. I say he's in the 64, 65 range. I think it's close, though. I think the number's fair, but I'll go slightly under.
What was the number again?
66.5.
So 2020-21, he had 50 points in 56 games, 67 points in 81 games, 74 points in 82, 70 and 81. I mean, you would just have to think he'd be over that, right? I mean, barring any injury, like he hasn't shown any reason that he's going to slow down. So it's like,
True.
Does LaFerriere allow that line to keep buzzing the way Byfield was last season?
Yeah, and that's the question is this new lineman that he has. But I mean, you have Jim Miller around. I think if things get down to the nitty gritty or things aren't going well, we'll see Quentin Byfield right up there mid game or something, or even early parts of the game, just in certain situations too. So, I mean, yeah, I'm probably right at that number for Kopi, but like I'm kind of with Holden here, Holden 92, where he says 68 to 70 points. So it's like it's barely over.
And then we got Lieb under. So we got it's a good line for a reason. It's Vegas. So this is a little interesting one here. We got a combo platter. Two guys that aren't necessarily known for scoring goals, more of a facilitator. A combo, Kopi and Fiala, combined 55 goals.
Under.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy for you guys.
Yeah. What?
So that's a little over 25 for each.
Yeah. I don't see Kopi scoring over 25. Maybe Kev gets there, but even then, he's probably going to be more of a facilitator. He's always been. But I don't know. I mean,
I think Fiala can get to the high 20s and push 30. But like you said, I don't know that Kopitar gets to 25. I think it'd be 22, 23. I think he'll be Kopi's going to have a 22, 23, and 41 type of season. I think something along those lines. So,
I mean, especially with who Kopi's playing with, right? I mean, I think LaFerriere realizes he's probably going to be a shooter on that line. Kopitar is always going to look to dish. We've seen it with Kempe.
I'd like to see Kempe. I know he was a really good passer, and like last year he showed that, and he kind of. I'd like to see him lean into shooting a bit more, though.
Lieb's like, hey, 22 and 41. That's 63, Joe.
I'm with you, Lieb.
All right, this is kind of an interesting one. It's just a player prop. So any game this season, does Adrian Kempe score 4 goals in a game plus 850?
Any game?
Any game this season, 4 goals.
No. I'd take that bet. I'd take it.
throw an extra hundy stick.
Yeah, I've thrown out stupider parlays than that.
All right, and then the plus, it's plus 225. Any player 40 plus goals, and really we only have one player on the team that can hit that.
I don't think Kempe. I'm going to say no. I think Kempe can challenge it again, but I'm going to say he falls short of it.
Yeah, I don't see a team or anybody on the team getting 40, unfortunately. I mean, what we saw one king do it for the first time since like '93. So, I think those odds are still too low. They need to be higher.
All right, let's get to a couple fan over-unders here. We got Nav coming here, over or under 18 games played 11-on-7 this year.
Ooh, that's a good one. Ooh, I'm going to say over because I think they do that a little bit more with Doughty out. And if he's out half the season, that's 41 games. Maybe around 20 games you see half that. I
think it's a combo of Doughty being hurt, and I really think them carrying 8 defensemen, even with a healthy Doughty, was a hint that Brant Clark wasn't playing 82 games. So I think that's just my opinion. I obviously don't know if that's accurate, but that's just my read on it. Otherwise, I don't know why they'd do that. So I'll say slightly under, though. Like, it'll probably be double digits, Nav, but I think it'll be a little under the 18. But that's fair question.
I think the forward play from Thomas and Turcotte maybe drive this more than the defensive play.
Fair.
And you see a little
Injuries.
bit more. So I'll say under as well. Trapper here trying to tug at our heartstrings. Over under 27 games for Trevor Lewis.
Way over. Are you?
So and I thought, there's some good ones. The chat's throwing out some heaters. Lieb has a similar one too. He put 40. So yeah, I think this is really low for Lewis. But Lieb had one that was 42.5.
Over. Switch.
And even so, I think that's low.
Go back to Trapper and switch the numbers around and put it as 72. There's your number.
Yeah, if Lewis is healthy, he's in every game.
He's in every day. What are we thinking he's not? He's in every day.
Yeah.
All right. We got over under 26.5 goals from Fogel.
Under.
Yeah,
under as well. Over under 18 for Laffy.
Under.
Ooh, pulling at my heartstrings here. That'd be a lot for him to ask him to get more than that. So I'll say under.
I don't think it's a lot to ask him to get. He's playing first line.
True. And first line power play. True.
But to your point, I'm being a little, smart assy because he's a second year player. Now he wasn't really even expected to be at this stage, but I think he can get to like 15 or so. I'm going to go under.
Yeah.
Kyle
Larson, 7.5 players over 20 goals. Last year we had 5, so that would be a huge uptick.
No.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Fiala, Kempe, Kopitar.
You had Kempe, Fiala, Kopitar, Trevor Moore, and Byfield.
Moore. So it would have to be Laferriere. It would have to be Fogel. I think maybe Fogel.
And Jeannot?
No, under. And I don't think there's a defenseman that scores 20. That's for sure. So, no, I think that's under.
Over under 25 wins for Kemper.
Ooh.
Can you give me the wins numbers last year? What guys had?
Yeah, let me look. I have all the stats up here. Let me see if there's a goalie. So Cam Talbot had 27 wins last year.
Oh, I'm saying over. Kemper's looked really good this season.
Do you think he's? But I just wonder the share. How much of a timeshare we're going to see?
I don't know if it'll be that much of a share. I think we saw a little bit more of it because of Talbot's age last year. I know he's got some injuries too.
Yeah,
that he's dealt with, especially last year. I think Lindgren took over, but even then, that's been kind of an underrated storyline. I feel like through training camp of how good Kemper's looked. That game against Anaheim, he was getting peppered in that first period.
He's been good. I'm gonna say under only because I just think there's a lot going on in terms of some injury risk. I think the Kings. I'm expecting this to be a little. I don't like when I remember when he was brought in. I believe it was Blake that had said something to the effect that it was going to be a timeshare. Like this wasn't going to be it. But that was months ago. I don't know. Is Blake alive? I haven't heard from him in quite a while. But so that may have changed. Maybe Kemper is the is the guy. So I don't know. I think that I'm going to go under, but just because of the reasons where I think there's still going to be Rittich getting a number of games, and I hopefully Kemper's healthy because when he is, I think he's a decent goalie. So
under.
You're under.
I think it's to be more of a split than we think, and I don't trust Kemper's health right now. And I know every season is separate, but I mean,
he has looked good.
He has looked good so far. Now you're tugging at my heartstrings. Over under 11.5 goals for Clark. I gotta support my boy, but where he gets it and is going to be on the power play. He is very good at the shots getting through. So you might get some tip-ins if the net front guy is a little bit more aggressive and doesn't just stand there. And which if they use Byfield, he's been working on his tip-ins a lot. That might uptick a little bit. I think it'd be tough because I don't think the 5-on-5 minutes are going to be there for him. If they allow him to run the first power play, like we've seen in 1 or 2 practices, then give me that all day because I think he's a true facilitator, but I just don't know where his minutes are going to be. And so I would say under if you're really asking me.
I want to ask you guys this. Let's play a little hypothetical too. Let's say Brant Clark. It seems like Brant Clark's going to man the first power play unit. At least that's what they've shown in the last practice that we saw. what if the Kings have like a legitimate like top 5 power play, and Drew and with Brant Clark running it, Drew Doughty comes back healthy? What do you do? Do you just say, hey, Drew, like Clarkie's getting it done? Like I wonder what that conversation turns into.
In that scenario, I think if it's that good of a power play and he's that much of a factor on it, I mean, I think even Drew, given his postseason comments last year about Clark coming in, I think he would even see that.
Yeah,
but who knows? That's hard to say. I'll take the under on the 11.5 goals, but I'll have some thoughts on Brant Clark later.
I think Drew just wants to win, and he's a very prideful player, so he wants to play in every situation. I could see him manning the second power play. Then, if like the first power play is so good, he mans the second, and then Spence is out regarding that. And then, are they really going to want to give him 25 minutes as soon as he comes back off the ankle? Probably not. That might be a place for him to cut down on the minutes there. But you're looking. This is all hope. I mean, we have evidence of a regime who wants to play players like England and Lewis more than what we should, and what the power play should look like. We envision it a little bit differently. Clark is a unicorn, and you need to put him in the best place to succeed. And that was the biggest gripe with me and their prospect, is that they don't put them in the best place to succeed. Kaliev's not on the power play. When they bring Fagemo up, he's not on the power play, even though he had 40 plus goals in the AHL. Like, they're afraid to make adjustments to allow these players to shine in spots. Now, obviously, this has kind of forced their hand with the power play, because who knows what it would have been. Would he have been the second power play, or would have he not even been a power play runner in Clark? But I think he's truly a unicorn. I think the fact that if people watch the AHL and how he manned the power play and shots getting through and his lateral movement and the way he sees the ice, this guy is an absolute freak with the puck. And I think the power play, if they can figure out that the low player and the bumper to where we don't have all lefties and the puck moves in a great way, the guy is ridiculous. And I think the power play could be a top 5 unit again with him manning it, because I truly believe he is an elite talent offensively already in the NHL when it comes to that. I mean, you're really pinpointing where he is excellent, and that's where he is.
That segment was brought to you by the Brant Clark Hype Train.
I've been sponsoring this podcast for 3 years now. All right, we're going to get into the over-unders for the team in points. Okay, before we give you the DraftKings over-under, the Athletic does theirs every single year, and we're going to kind of see, where Dom Lucian and the Athletics model has it. I tried saving and posting the photo up there. I guess let me do this. Let me kind of Jimmy rig this around here and do it that way, and share my screen. But we're going to talk about the over-under for points and where they are going to end up this year. And I know that they have it's really changed with Drew Doughty leaving, right? So let's see. Can you guys see it up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now they have him at 16th in the NHL. The model says 92. We'll say 92.5 points. 55% chance to make the playoffs, which essentially is the last seed in the playoffs. 1% chance to make the Stanley Cup. And you guys see where the percentages lie there, right? So the highest percentage is in between then it is the 90 and 95 route. So obviously you pick the middle there. There's a couple other props there. And Dom says, without Drew, the Kings' playoff hopes look significantly more precarious unless young key players step up. And obviously we had that episode 2 times ago, the young guns. So go back and listen to that to get our predictions on where the young players can help this team. But what do you guys view this model, and is there a number that kind of sticks out for you?
I would just like to take this moment to say we're going to see the models come out, the Athletics here. There's one other that I've seen that with projections, Mike and Blake McCurdy and Ineffective Math. We'll see Jay Freshers. We'll see a bunch. and you're going to see the Kings are projected for 92.7 points. They're going to fly off the handle. When understand there's a range. It's not saying that they can't get to 100 points. It's like, at least in this model, Dom projects them, it's 17% chance to get to 100 points, right? It's not as if, I just want to throw a little context into when you see these models, these are generally ranges, and the one number that you get is the most likely outcome, not the fact that they hate the Kings. It's just based on their whatever goes into their model. So just, I feel like necessary to point that out. Sorry, Russ, go ahead.
No, yeah, it's just I actually thought this was a little generous from his model because I feel like Lushizin's and even Jay Fresh's models aren't necessarily been favorable to the Kings. So to see them even be 16th out of 32 teams, I thought that was quite surprising, to be honest with you, especially given the defensive core on the left side that is full of players that aren't analytical darlings. So it's like to see this now this model say that, okay, well, they're still projected to be a playoff team and get 90 to 95 points. I thought that was quite surprising.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think, as obviously not to read the whole article, it's a very good one. They do a good job breaking down. They usually do, The Athletic. And this is, so we mentioned Dom Luszczyszyn, just to point out Sean Gentile and Shayna Goldman, also contributors to the projection. So they talk about Byfield, they talk about some of the young guns, they talk about some of the what could go right, what could go wrong. So I definitely recommend it. And one of the concerns, one of the concerns, as I hinted at or mentioned earlier, was, if they go with that bottom pair, could be among the league's worst if it's something like an Edmondson Burrows. And that matters. That stuff matters on the margins. I know people sometimes probably get freaked out. Like, we always talk about the bottom pair defenseman. Why does it matter? Well, it matters. Like, you have, if it doesn't matter what changes you make and the players you bring in or whatever, but when you look at it, you're like, you could still potentially be weighed down because you're just limiting your upside and what you can do when you have certain players in the lineup. And I think when you're trying to scratch and claw your way to a playoff spot, to a wild card, or maybe to home ice, if you're trying to get second instead of third, that stuff matters. And building out the roster properly matters. And I think that's what makes us so frustrated sometimes. But recommend the article for sure.
And there's a 38% chance that Kings lose their minds with the first round exit again. I think. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I was making a joke, but I think, again, I think it's pretty generous. I mean, there's a lot of question marks with Doughty, and we all believe in the talent of Spence and Clark, but there is a world or universe out there where it doesn't go as planned. And it's not like the left side can carry the defensive core. And so the offense doesn't get going with the 1-2-2. And you see, DraftKings had us as the fourth best odds to finish first in the division. And it looks like this model has us at the highest odds of finishing fourth, but there's also a 21% chance to finish fifth. And I think that's a pretty big chance to, depending on how the blue line looks. And so it's all optimism and rainbows right now. But we're going to give you real stuff here. And I think that if the Kings finish fifth or 7%, I don't think they'll finish sixth, but if they finish outside the top 3 or 4, it's because the blue line, wasn't as expected. Drew Doughty maybe takes a little bit longer. The lines don't pair. The old goalie, it worked last year. It doesn't work this year. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with this team. And there's a lot of things that we think that can go right. I mean, you look at the 1% for 115 points, right? Byfield takes an elite jump. That line kicks it off. Clark's a 40 to 50 point defenseman. Spence is getting Norris Trophy nods, in the first part of the season. All those things can happen as well. And so there's such a variance with this roster. And we've mentioned on multiple podcasts about what the young guns are going to bring to this team. I think we're going to live and die, and we're going to see a lot of that early in the season. And, if they're cooking and then we get Drew Doughty back and he doesn't have to shoulder the load like he has had to do every single season since he's been on the roster, this team could be that 106 point team if the power play gets cooking. There's a lot of what ifs going on. So I'm just interested to see how this team plays. And how I'm going to look at the season is in segments, month by month. Does this team get better? Do they kind of gestate into something else? And as they move along, and what this team is come 2025 might look completely different based on how players progress since October.
Yeah. Like, again, to your point, there's a lot of question marks and a lot of what ifs. And I think as Kings fans, you want to have the rosy outlook for everything, but that's just not realistic. I'm sure some of the players will do great. Some of the players that we hope will do great won't. That's just what it is. I'll point out too, for those not familiar with Micah Blake McCurdy on Twitter and Ineffective Math, his projection has the Kings at 90 points. Which puts them, that's actually fifth in the Pacific Division to hit in his model. I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe his model tends to lean a little bit heavier on goaltending. So perhaps he sees a little bit of a weakness there. But again, these are ranges, these are models but it's fun to talk about. And as Russ pointed out, I think the Kings are one of the teams that have kind of exceeded models in the past. So certainly could do it again.
All right. The official over-under from DraftKings Sportsbook, code THPN, is 95.5 points.
Oof. That's a good over-under. Those damn odds makers are so good. I always bet on a football game, and I'm like, 42.5 points, easy. Let's go over. And then it's like 42. I'm like, ugh. So nerve-wracking. I hate it. Man, they're 95.5. I don't know.
So while you're thinking, I mean, that last year, now you never know what to think in the West. Like, that was not a playoff team in the Western Conference last year. That would have been a playoff team in the Eastern Conference last year. Who knows how the conferences, shake out from year to year. But I like the number. I think the number's fair. I think as much as we're bullish on, the replacing Drew Doughty, I mean, that's still, you're missing Drew Doughty, your best defenseman for half the season potentially. So, I think that's a big loss that inevitably is going to play a somewhat of a negative factor, even if there's a positive individually, right? Even if we see positive gains from Spence and from Clark, to lessen the blow, I still think it's going to be a blow of some sort. I just don't think you can just take out your number one defenseman and be like, we're going to be hunky-dory and be just fine. Like, I still think the team can make playoffs without Doughty, but it's going to be they're going to have to scratch and claw to do so. So I don't know. I think the number's a fair number. I don't think they did what they needed to do. Huh?
Pick a side.
Yeah, I'm going to. Don't worry.
You're Humpty Dumptying right now.
No, I know exactly what I'm going, because I don't think they did enough in the offseason in the top six forwards. I don't think they did a good enough job on the back end. If Doughty made it, Edmondson probably made it. It was just as bad, and then Doughty gets hurt. So I think it's under. I think they're a bubble team at this point. So I think I'm going to go slightly under. Like, I don't think they're going to fall off and be in like the low 80s by any means, but I think this is a team in the lower 90s. If things break right, they can get to the mid upper 90s and maybe sneak into third in the division again. But right now I see it probably more of a battling for a wild card spot team.
I mean, to be honest with you, when Doughty was healthy, I thought this team was better than what they had on paper last year. Or at least I think what they're going to be on the ice. Because last year we went into the year thinking off a high from the two previous years. Like, okay, we're seeing progression. We get Dubois. We thought there was going to be like some stability, I guess, down the middle of the ice. We never came to fruition. Still was a 99-point team, which is crazy to think about with everything that went wrong in the season. So when I was coming, I was like thinking like, okay, well, now you replaced Dubois with Byfield, who I think is going to have this monster year. And I get that you're losing him on the top line. You're replacing him with Alex Ferrier. We haven't seen much out of him yet, but I still think it's a pretty good team. So I would have thought like, okay, they can still get up there. So this 95.5 points, it's right at the border for me, but I'm going to still say over. I think it's like right at 96, 97 is where they get to. And maybe that gets you like a bubble roster or bubble team in terms of the playoffs. But I look at this Pacific Division, it's not scary at all. Like there's a lot of these teams still in rebuilds that are still kind of figuring things out. I mean, you have Vancouver too with the Thatcher Demko situation. That was a player that kind of had a really good year for the Vancouver Canucks last year, and Steeloffs looks like he had a really good playoffs. But even then, like, will he turn into a pumpkin when the clock strikes 12, like during the regular season? Like, who knows what we're going to get out of him? And you look at Calgary, they're rebuilding. Anaheim's still trying to figure it out. San Jose's rebuilding. Seattle, like, what do they got up there? And they made some signings, but Chandler Stevenson, does that really change the norm up there? So I don't know. Like, Edmonton's going to be the cream of the crop. Like, even Vegas has a lot of question marks too with their injury history. They lost some good players in March or so. So I don't know. I think this division's really easily, or at least one of the easier ones in terms of across the league. So I think the Kings can probably take advantage with a team that's, I think, built a little bit better for the regular season than opposed to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the way they get the over is because the division is not as strong. And we had Simbin on talking about Vegas, and they have their problems, across the board. The Edmonton is the only team that is going to be a juggernaut all year long. I mean, you're going to see glimpses from other people. Does Vancouver with Demko, does that situation really there? I think a lot of the other teams like Anaheim and you might get more fights out of Anaheim this year if they're healthy. So maybe a lot of the other teams might be able to steal some games. Where I think the Sharks will be better. So will they steal more games from opponents? Who knows about that? My heart's telling me over in the fact that I do think the offense is going to really uptick. I think we might be like more of a 4-3 game. I have a feeling that it might just be bad, but I'm going to stick with my gut and my heart. I'm going to say over as well on that. I think the offense will be better. I think the power play has a chance to be a whole lot better. I don't know if the penalty kill will be top 5 like it was all last year, because you lose a major penalty killer in Drew Doughty, but maybe we won't win games 2-1. We'll win games 4-3 instead, or 3-2.
Not to mention Matt Roy on the penalty kill too. Played a lot of good minutes in those situations.
That makes the Doughty loss hurt a little bit more too.
Yeah. Right.
Well, so when you talk about when Drew Doughty went down, a couple years back, still had Matt Roy. Mm-hmm. So they had a steady, stable, top 4 legit guy. Now, again, I will preface this by saying we're all bullish on Spence and Clark. Neither of them have played in the top 4 in the NHL, and you're just asking Spence to play top pair minutes without a Roy safety blanket below him. It's Brandt Clark or Kyle Burrows. So, again, we're bullish on the individuals, but to think it's not going to have a trickle-down effect, I think is a little misguided.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. A lot of variance in this team here, and if you're having problems with coping with the beginning of the season, our next sponsor here is for you. BetterHelp is sponsoring this episode. Therapy is for everybody now. It's much easier to get. You're always able to go out there and grow, learn new skills, and coping with the season and the variance that it might be could be one of them. What would you like to learn? Maybe a new skill, new language, Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder in yourself and learning new skills that maybe you didn't think were possible. If you're thinking about starting therapy, please give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with your licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. Well, we made it to the headliner fight. The 2 heavyweights are getting warmed up. It is bold predictions time. And we had some spicy ones last season. Joe's came to fruition. I was pretty close. I don't remember. I think my bold prediction was Kempe, or not Kempe, but Byfield. Maybe I said Byfield needed to get 60. Maybe
60 points, I think, was your.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking through.
That's why I said it was my barometer, but maybe I don't remember what my bold prediction was. Anyways, That was last year. This is this year. Joe, you were the winner, so I'm gonna let you hold yours for a little bit. Russ, I'm gonna let you start, man. Where is your bold prediction for the season?
Yeah, my bold prediction revolves around number 55 in Quentin Byfield. I think last year a lot of people considered it a breakout year for Byfield, and myself included, just because we were hoping to see some progression out of him, and we definitely saw it with the 55 points, 20 goals, 35 assists. But I feel like that was him scratching the surface. I think from everything I've seen and watching Quentin Byfield, I think this is a player that over the last year was maybe just thinking like, okay, I just need to get myself feeling comfortable in the NHL and consider myself like a legitimate NHLer. I think now he's coming into the season thinking, okay, now I'm coming in knowing that I'm going to be an elite player. And I feel like every time he steps on the ice, he realizes I'm the best player on the ice when I'm out there. So, I mean, there's a confidence in him that we haven't seen yet. And I feel like we're going to see a whole new level in Quentin Byfield in his game. Some of the moves I've seen him play. There was one move in the Anaheim game that I think Carter Scores on Twitter shared. You go back and check it out. It was just Pavel Datsyuk type. Like, that's the type of move that just opens your eyes and says, wow, there's a player here. And not to mention all the physicality and the rough stuff and that edge that he's kind of bringing to training camp practices and scrimmages with his own teammates. Like, this is still a 22-year-old kid who's only been in the NHL for a couple of years, still pulling off moves like this. So my bold prediction is that Quentin Byfield is going to lead the team in scoring. And whether that ends up being 75 points or so, because that was what Andrew and Kempe led the team in scoring last year, who knows? But I still think that you're going to see a whole new level in Quentin Byfield's game where he becomes close to becoming a point-per-game player in the NHL. And my only concern, though, is that he's not getting first power play minutes to start. So that's where my concern is. But other than that, everything else looks good for old QB.
If it makes you feel any better, Russ, one of my concerns with the Trevor Moore 30-goal thing last year was he wasn't getting first power play time, but he still did it. So
he still did it. Still
QB
did
can do it. Good stuff.
I like it. I mean, you're playing. Hopefully, that line just sticks together all year, or at least the pairing, the coupling with Fiala. And Fiala is a guy that pushes the pace. Byfield can control it, and even if they get a lot of their points on 5-on-5, I think you're right. I think he showed a little bit of domination at the beginning of last season, and then the end of last season, you saw flashes of like, okay, this guy could be an 80 to 95 point player with the right wingers. And then you're like, oh, it wasn't consistent. And then it was consistent and he was relied upon more. I think the consistency does go up this year. It's spicy that he leads the team in points just because every year it usually comes down to the same guy in Kopitar. But Kempe got it. It was a 3-headed monster last season. So to add a 4th head to this Hydra, maybe kind of you take away points from elsewhere. But I like the spiciness of that. What do you think, Joe?
I was funny when I was debating what to do, and I've been thinking a while. I mean, when you hit on a bold prediction with Trevor Moore scoring 30, I'm like, how am I going to follow this up? And to be honest with you, it was going to be a PL Dubois bold prediction at some point, but obviously he is no longer a king, so I had to go a different direction. I was thinking about a Byfield one, and I like that. I think it is bold because you still have Kopitar who leads the team every year. Obviously, Fiala is the most talented player skill-wise on the team, and Adrian Kempe just led the team last year, so there's definitely competition there. But it would be such a big jump for him, but I like it.
If you're gonna get bolder, you're gonna have to have a bold prediction with Andres Englund or Joel Edmondson to get bolder than the 30 goals there. Well, the fans were clamoring for it, and I'm gonna reach into the beyond and put on the tinfoil hat for my bold prediction here. I'm going to pull it from the crystal ball and the cosmos, and maybe the unfortunate demise of Drew Doughty made more conviction in this forever. The conductor is not getting off the train. We're putting nitrous in this bad boy. We're getting the bold prediction for Clark. And right now, I looked at the last year and the way the blue line looked, the switching to the 1-2-2. I think Gavrikov, if they keep him on Gavrikov and he earns his minutes, I think that pairing is going to be really good for him. I like the moxie that I saw from Clark even more than what he normally has. I'm here to be an NHL star. I'm here to be a production for this team. My goal is not to make the roster. My goal is to be a producer. Now he's getting power play one time. The guy is a freaking wizard on the blue line. I wanted to go super high, and then I looked at the points, and I was like, where do I find where is it still bold enough? I'm going over 45 points for Brandt Clarke. The power play is going to be a top 5 unit. I really think they're going to score more. He's going to rack up the assists on the point. If they can figure out and get an active bumper player or a net front player out of Byfield and other guys that are there, I think the power play really takes a step up this year. He's going to be in on the rush. Over 45 points for Brandt Clarke. I really think that he takes that next step. There's always a player in NHL that takes that next leap, that maybe that it's a prospect that kind of realizes he's a top prospect. We saw that last year a little bit with QB. I think this year is going to be Brandt Clarke. As long as his minutes stay there 5-on-5, the power play is going to help him get there. 45 points for Brandt Clarke.
Brandon, listen, I might as well just piggyback, because my bold prediction also includes
Norris Trophy. All right.
And I was looking, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to find, because it's so hard, because he's played 25 NHL games, I think. So he's had very little, total NHL time. So, not a ton of sample to go off of. But when I look and I see, last year he was in the top 10 in the Kings in assists per 60 minutes. The year before, in primary assists, so first assists, 6th on the Kings. And over the last 2 years, in his 25 games, he is 5th on the Kings in primary assists per 60 is Brandt Clarke. Again, 25 games, not a lot. Last year, not only is there's a reason for that. It's because in part of it is last year, he was second only to Kevin Fiala in shot assists per 60 minutes. So no matter what I look at, this guy just is in the rate stats on a per 60 and contributing to the offense, setting plays up. To Randon's point, he's going to, at least from the start of it, looks like he's going to be getting a lot of power play time, perhaps on the first unit. His minutes are inevitably going to go up because of the Doughty injury. So my bold prediction was, it might end up being a little bolder than Randon's in a way, but they could be pretty close. I think Brandt Clarke exceeds 40 assists.
Ooh.
That is my bold prediction.
What did you say, Brandon?
45 points.
Yeah, I was going to say 50 points, and then I was like, man, Drew Doughty played the whole season at 25 minutes and got 50 points. So that would be, I think that would almost too spicy to where I was like, that's eating ghost chili peppers. Like that's way too spicy for this segment. That's not. But see, I can see Taco Bell.
I can see like a 5-40 season for Brandt Clarke.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to score a ton, but his creativity, his vision, his passing ability, the way he reads plays. So Randon, I was like, do I comment? It's like, well, I'm kind of in lockstep. So just as you can probably tell, we don't talk about this beforehand. But although it wasn't rocket science, I think to think that Randon was going to have a Brandt Clarke bold prediction. But the more I looked at it, I'm like, man, I'm with you, Randon. I think it's
the
bold.
tinfoil hat. Cheers to you, good sir.
There we go. So we are obviously bullish on Quentin Byfield and Brandt Clarke on this show. I'm sure everybody's shocked at that.
The guy lives and breathes hockey. He wants to be the best at what he does. I think he's got the size to play 5-on-5 a little bit more and earn those minutes there. And if this team is going to get out and run, this guy wants to be in the play. Like he wants to be in the play all the time. He's going to be like, hey, Gavrikov, why don't you just bail me out here? Let's go get in the rush. 5-40, I like it. 5-45. You know what? I am going to go Ghost Pepper. Let's go 50 points. I'm in a good mood. Man, because I was thinking Clark and like, do I do that or do I go like somewhere people are not going to predict that I'm going to go and kind of go there? I was kind of thinking over 90 plus points for Kevin Fiala because I think he's got so much more in the tank. You know, where do I go there? Does the power play get really cooking and Kempe gets 45 plus goals? Like, so there were some other options that I really want to go to, but I've been on this guy. Like, he's been my boy, and I really think that he is coming here to wreck shop. I just hopefully, if the only way this thing gets destroyed, in my opinion, is if management clips his wings.
Yeah,
but he's a peacock.
Exactly.
He's got to fly.
So that's the kicker, Brandon, because I'll ask you guys and the people in the chat, if there's a healthy Brandt Clark, does he play 82 games?
Yes, I think so.
I say no.
I also say no.
Yeah. It's funny because I was having this conversation, I think, with a couple other media people at PAX's, and we were talking about some over-unders, and I brought up the point of Brandt Clark, and I said over-under 65 games for Brandt Clark. And I think it was Zach who I was talking to, and he said, he's playing in every game. And I was like, I don't know. I hope
so.
I hope, I'm the same way. Like,
well, clearly for Brandon and I's bold predictions, we certainly hope so.
Yeah, he needs to be. But, like, from everything we've seen out of this organization and how they
he gets 45 or if he gets 45 to 50 points in 60 games, I mean, and they're taking him out of the lineup. What are we doing?
Well, he didn't play because of the points he was going to make last year, right? Because all those points he was going to accumulate.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so, like, there's a reason. They expect him to score a lot of points, too. But, I mean, what? Like, he only averaged, I was looking at stats, he only averaged just over 13:39 time on ice last year. That's definitely going to bump up, at least when Drew Doughty's not here. So maybe get some 15 minutes a night. You get a couple more minutes on the power play for sure, which he should be on the first power play unit, because I think, Brandon, you said, like, there's no other defenseman on this team that probably has the offensive skill set that Brandt Clark has. So, I mean, just from passing the puck to Kevin Fiala, who's probably going to find somebody else for a goal, there's a secondary assist, at least 5 or at least 10 of them maybe right there on the power play if he's getting at least 40-plus games of PP1 minutes.
That's
there you
what
go.
I'm saying. I think he could get 20 power play points this year if he's gonna be atop that unit. I mean, top power play quarterbacks for power plays that are good are going to get 20 to 30 power play points. Some of them more than that. So if he is that good on the power play, then Brandon, that looks good, and both of us look pretty good. Real quick on the power play, Russ. From the games I've seen most of the games I've been able to see. I don't think there's been anything that hasn't been on TV. There's something I've been able to watch the next day or something like that. And it's hard because the rosters are in flux. But definitely seeing some Kopitar in the bumper.
Yep. On
the power play, which I think that's the way to go right now. Be curious to see if this goes along, if that's what they decide to start the season with once the full rosters are actually playing intact. But I like that. I think that's the play.
Yeah, I love it too. I mean, you give Kevin Fiala a chance to work on the wing.
Let him roam.
Obviously, he's got his shot on the other wing.
Yep.
Brandt Clark's up top. Alex Affair seems to be the guy down low as the right shot. It was funny. Jim Miller made the funny comment. Like I said, like, if you have a right shot, you're a good chance of playing on this team somewhere.
Yeah. It was in regards to Jack Studnicka, too.
It's funny. But, so I think it's great. I think a lot of fans have probably been clamoring for that. Maybe Kopitar has kind of slowed play down a little bit on the wing along the boards. So get him off that half wall, put him in the bumper, where obviously he's a very smart, cerebral player. Put him in that position. Can't have a better option there. So, I like it.
Like it a lot.
What have you guys seen from Laffy down low? Has he been more active? Because for the last couple seasons, they've just been planted in front of the goalie and haven't really moved around. So
he's been behind the goal line. Like, we've seen a play, and I don't think they scored on it, but it was we talk about the triangle play quite a bit, and it's just an easier play because him being a right-hand shot. So the pass went from the left circle from Fiala down to LaFerriere, and it was a one-time play out to Kopitar in the bumper. And like that, it just is so much harder if it's a lefty, because your stick, if you think about it, that pass is so much harder to get to your stick as a lefty, and your stick is closer to the net, so you're passing more so through traffic. It's just everything is more – it's more congested. It's very, very difficult. So, yes, he has been down below that goal line, but what I also like is, again, I love the idea of Kevin Fiala letting him roam a little bit. Let Kevin Fiala, if he's got to, weave behind the goal line. LaFerriere can backfill him. So then, if need be, they could work a little give and go. And then you have a righty LaFerriere peeling off the left circle, and he can get into a shooting lane or a pass to Kopitar in the bumper or cross seam or up to Clark or something. So I just feel like it opens up a little bit more.
And you have Clark in the half ball and boom, one-timer, 6 goals this season.
Right. If they allow Fiala to roam a little bit and go down low, go behind the net, let him do some, get creative. And if LaFerriere is able to backfill in. So I think so far he's looked okay. It's obviously it's hard to say for sure, but I can certainly be willing to give it the shot. And I know fans are, I get it. I like the fact that Byfield's not on this power play. I totally understand it, but it's just tough because when you look at how most teams want to attack in a 1-3-1 formation, like handedness can matter. Those little plays, it's not impossible. These are pros, these are elites, but so much harder. And on the margins, you need them to be bang, bang like that. And it's so hard to do if the handedness is off. So I'm willing to give this a run with LaFerriere down low.
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm going to be unbearable if Clark has this type of start, and I'm here for it. So, well, thank you guys for coming in here and getting our bold predictions. If those 2 bold predictions happen, or the amalgamation of Joe and I and Russ, they're going to be well above the 95-point mark, because that is a lot of offense coming your way, and I'm all for that boldness. So it's going to be a wonderful season. Track it all at hockeyroyalty.com. We got articles coming out all the time. The writing's going to uptick when this game starts, so catch all those wonderful articles there. Please follow us at everywhere at Random Commando 24, NHL Russell, JW Paterino. All your rain news, Kopitar for HOF with our boy there, Kyle. Please hit that like button on the way out. All the algorithm stuff that we get to do, helps us out, making comments, hitting those like buttons. Appreciate that, all you do there. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors at BetterHelp and DraftKings. Code THPN there. Man, I'm excited for the season. It's coming up. A lot of hype. I like it. I like it a lot. And as always on this podcast, go Kings go.